Hi guys, and welcome to this course. In this course we'll learn all about bleed. So let's hop inside. So what is actually bleed? Bleed is allowing the printer or the press an extra space in case of a miscut. So if the printer cuts a bit too far off the page, or if it cuts a bit too close, that's actually margins. That's something else. We'll learn about that in another lesson. But if it cuts a bit too far off the page, then normally you would have like a white line. You would see a white line after the picture, or a black line, depends on the kind of the page. So this bleed helps to prevent that from happening, and it helps allow the document look whole and complete even if the printer made this slight cutting mistake. Essentially what you're doing is expanding the page or the image or the object on the page slightly more to allow some room for an error of the printers. When you open a new document, whether it's Illustrator or any program, you'll see there's an option here for bleed. That option enables the printer to cut a drop off the image or the artboard, and your picture will still look great as if it's cut right on the spot. So normally you would add between 2 and 4 millimeters. Obviously it depends on the size of your work. If you're using a large banner, then you would need more bleed than that, or a small business card, then 2 will be good enough. Make sure this is chained together, because otherwise you'll land up with different numbers. You can see they're not all joined. Once you chain them, then they'll all be equal. You can see they're all equal together. Also here, like with the other Adobe programs we mentioned in the past, you can, let's say, type in 3 or 1 inch and click anywhere, and it will convert you to millimeters. So that's a cool feature to know of. Let's just bring this back to 3 and press create. So this is what you'll get when you use bleed. You see this red box around, that's the bleed. So your work is actually on this artboard, but you're allowing the printer to make a mistake when it comes to this area. So if the printer will cut out there, then it will still be fine as long as it doesn't miss too much, obviously, which I don't think will happen. There is also a margin. That's if the printer cuts inwards too much. So also that's a safe area, it's called a safe space, where that's where all your object is supposed to be, only in that middle, not too close to the corner and not beyond. But for the bleed purpose, you have to extend any object you're drawing. So say I have this background on my flyer. Let's change this to make it more exciting. So I've got this background on my flyer. Now essentially with what I've done, I didn't gain anything because this is not going onto the bleed. So if the printer would cut out there, then you will have the same problem. You would see some white sticking out, or whatever the case may be. You must extend any of your objects which is going toward, like, close to the corner. You have to extend it out all the way onto the bleed. So like that, right through to the bleed, and that way you'll be safe even if your printer cuts out there. Also, say you've got a logo and you're making it in the corner, just change the color. So say this is your logo. Now it depends. If your logo would be there, then you don't need to extend it because you don't want it to be in the corner. But if you want a logo like halfway through, that you only see the half of the logo, like what sometimes they do. So you must make sure once again that extends all the way until the bleed. You can or obviously you can extend it a lot more. That doesn't make a difference because it won't be, when you export the file, then it won't be exported in any case, but at least till the bleed. So must be make sure that it's gone past the bleed. If you didn't set up a bleed, then even if you would extend this object or the background or the image after the artboard, it wouldn't help because that won't be taken into account. Only what's in this bleed area will be exported. Now what happens if you set up an artboard or a document without any bleed? You forgot about it or whatever the case may have been. Let's just demonstrate. So I've got this document without any bleed and I press create, and now I don't have any bleed. Just by the way, you obviously don't need to put bleed on any online object. If you're going to publish your work online or you're developing a website or any of that sort, then obviously you don't need to put bleed because you're not going to have any of these cutting issues. That's only for printers problems. So now how do I add bleed once I have the document open? You can see I've got this properties panel here. If you don't have it, you can always go to Windows and properties. There you go. Oops, now I just took it off. Windows properties, and then you've got document setup, or you can always go to file and choose document setup. From there you have the shortcut there. It's essentially the same thing, and there you've got this bleed here. Don't worry about the other stuff, we'll learn about them. You've got this bleed and you can always just add it there. So let's say we do 3, you have the same thing to link them all together or to unlink them. Normally you would choose to link them, and you can type in the amount, press OK, and the bleed will appear around the border. Just to mention now the last thing that's very important. So let's just go back to this first document. Once I created the document and I'm happy with everything, when I choose file export, don't worry, we'll learn about all this later in more depth. You must choose, so say I go export, you must make sure you check use artboards. Otherwise it will export the whole thing, including all what you've got on the side and all your scribbles on the stuff or other objects you may have here on the side, and you don't want to export them. It will export that as well. That's why you must choose use artboard, and then it will export only what's until the bleed. So that's that. Thank you so much for joining me on this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you gained anything, please leave a like and subscribe to make sure you don't miss out anything. And let me know of any feedback or comments you've got in the comments below. Thank you so much. See you in the next video.